Hey everyone, RogueGold here, welcome back to The Division 2, and today we have a new entry in the Ubisoft saga. So for those who have not kept up, Ubisoft has been going through a lot of transformation in the recent months and years, largely forced by financial situations, failed bets, many other decisions that the company has made. That all culminated in a pretty big announcement that they made a few months ago. I covered it in this video, I'll have it linked at the upper corner and down in the description. I highly recommend you check that one out before watching this, just so that you have the context of what's going on here. But given this channel is all about the Division and IP that is owned and operated by Ubisoft, I feel as though it is important to cover and discuss these big changes and moves being made, as they can have a very real impact on our franchise. As many of you likely know, though, I don't jump at just any update on this stuff. I try and wait until there is real, important, and tangible news to discuss, and that is what we have got today. Ubisoft is proposing a new business model that, in theory, could benefit the Division in the long run, if you'll believe it. So, we'll get into it, we'll cover it all. As we dive in, if you enjoy the video and you want to stay up to date on everything with the Division 2, including news like this, game updates, you name it, then I hope you will consider clicking that subscribe button if you're not already a part of our community. Additionally, as always, I have to give a thank you to our channel members. Your ongoing support keeps me going, keeps the lights on, so thank you so much. But, without further ado, let's get to this. Alright, so once again, I'm going to recommend that you watch that previous video if you have not, for context on this all. Assuming you have, you'll recall that a few months ago, Ubisoft got a big cash injection from Tencent, and in return, Tencent then got a minority stake in this new subsidiary that Ubisoft was creating, basically a new company that is separate from the Ubisoft that we know. That subsidiary now holds control over the Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six brands. Now that subsidiary is still majoritarily controlled by Ubisoft, but it has notable stake in it from Tencent. I believe the door was left open for other stakeholders to come in and join as well. So that is what happened back then. Now today's update expands on that a little bit. It also gives us greater insight into what Ubisoft's plans are for the remainder of their IP that still remains at the old Ubisoft company that we know, and that includes the Division. So I was made aware of this from an article posted by Insider Gaming back on Wednesday. This is written by Tom Henderson. I will leave a link for this article in the description below in case you want to go and check it out for yourself. But the title reads, Exclusive Yves Guillemot's internal memo to staff on new creative houses Ubisoft structure. In case you don't know, Yves is the CEO of Ubisoft, right? He's the leader. And so this is a memo and letter that he wrote to all of the staff and developers working at Ubisoft. So, Henderson's article begins with, Yves Guillemot has announced that Ubisoft will soon have a creative houses structure moving forward. Now, the first part of the memo here just involves Yves focusing on that aforementioned subsidiary, which again does not include the Division in any way, so we're not going to cover it. He goes on to name the CEOs of that new individual subsidiary. It is going to be co-ran by Ubisoft Montreal's studio, I think he's the general director, as well as, get this, Yves Guillemot's son, Charlie. So, despite all of the faults that Ubisoft has had and all of this advice that they've gotten, they're still not going to shake the nepotism claims. Good stuff, Ubi. But that's not really important to us. What I want to focus on here is how they explain that this new subsidiary, again, the one that controls AC, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six, it is the first in a new initiative that they're calling Creative Houses. If we take a look at this quote right here, it says, this subsidiary is a part of Ubisoft's broader reorganization, which we will structure into creative houses. It is the first in a new organizational ecosystem. So he then goes on to get into greater detail regarding the subsidiary and that specific creative house, as they call it, again, under Christoph and Charlie. Eventually, though, he moves on to providing some greater detail and context on what exactly these creative houses are and what they will mean, and that is what I want to focus on. So, he says the creative houses structure is one of the major outcomes of the Transformation Committee's work. The pace is fast, and they are on track to meet their 100-day goal by the end of October. If you do not know what he is talking about, because of all of the trouble that Ubisoft was in, they went and put together, I believe it was a third party that they hired, basically a team to aid in making the smartest, most objective moves that they could make to pull the company out of the murky waters that they were wading into. And so what he's saying here is that this Creative House initiative is one of the biggest proposals and ideas that has come from that committee. He goes on to say the objectives of reorganizing into creative houses are ambitious: to give autonomy to teams, increase accountability so that you can focus on fully creating outstanding games that we care about, that will shape our future, and that make us proud. Our goal is to create coherent creative houses that each reflect the different types of gaming experiences within them. Our portfolio is diverse and vast, and the creative houses will help give it new meaning and human scale. By becoming closer to players, the creative houses will allow us to focus more on our games and on offering invigorating challenges for everyone. These creative houses will be autonomous and fully accountable for their commercial and business objectives. So, there is a lot to unpack there, but this is basically saying that with all of the IP that is remaining with Ubisoft itself, again, that is not included in that new subsidiary, they want to section those off into groups or houses, as they call it, that better reflect the identity and needs of those specific IPs. Now, does that mean actually spinning off each of these houses into its own company, like they did with the subsidiary? I don't believe so, but I'm no economist or business expert, so feel free to correct me. Now, oftentimes these kinds of statements and just speak from CEO comes with a lot of jargon and fluff. You might be like, I don't really know what any of that means, but what I want to focus on here is the last few words of that final paragraph, where it says these creative houses will be autonomous and fully accountable for their commercial and business objectives. So, if I'm interpreting this correctly, I think that this actually could turn out to be good news for the division. Now, let me be clear. For now, these are just words. As always, we need to wait and see action on this and to see that they're actually going to follow up with these plans and promises. At the end of the day, this is also Ubisoft that we're dealing with, where despite these claims of game and player-focused transformations, Yves still went and appointed his son as CEO of one of these creative houses, so whoopee. However, what I believe that they're implying is them saying that each house will now only need to worry about their own IP and its individual progress. Of course, these things are all still going to be owned and operated by Ubisoft, but in theory, less constricted by the failures or successes of other games and IPs that have nothing to do with the other one. Right? In other words, whereas in the past, The Division and Just Dance, let's say, might be compared to one another in like a financial report, now those two IPs, assuming they would not be placed in the same creative house, which likely they wouldn't be, would be judged and analyzed on their own merits. And so, historically, one big complaint about how Ubisoft has ran the Division IP is that a game of this nature isn't really suited for a publisher that has a billion other projects that are also in need of large attention and funding. And so, let's say hypothetically, and again, I'm no business expert, take it at that, but what if the lead of the Division's creative house now has the autonomy and authority to say, hey, we brought in X amount of revenue this quarter, we're going to put a good chunk of that back in to bolster development and drive even more revenue moving forward. To be perfectly clear, we do not know that that is exactly how this is going to work, but at the very least, it seems promising. Because if things go well, I think that this could prove to be a business model and leadership structure that is much better suited and tailored towards the division's needs and its uniqueness compared to the rest of Ubisoft's portfolio. One big outstanding question, though, is will the division actually get its own dedicated creative house? If so, who leads that? Could it be someone like Julian Garrity, who is currently serving as the Division franchise's executive producer? Could it be someone like Thomas Andren, I believe his name is, who is currently the general manager at Massive? Given they seem to be pairing some of these IPs up, though, it also seems very likely that we could be bundled in with the likes of Ghost Recon and Splinter Cell, given the overarching Clancy license, also just the similarity in the genre and tone of these three franchises. So, in a case like that, then who runs the house? Does that person then have the Division's best interest in mind when you also have to consider something like Ghost Recon and Splinter Cell? So again, because of those unknowns, this is not a guarantee that things are going to improve or that this model will be better in the long run, but simply looking at this on paper, I foresee greater chances for success and prosperity under a model like this compared to Ubisoft's historic way of doing things. So you may be wondering, all right, well, when are we going to get some of those answers? It turns out not too long from now. The memo then ends with, we will be able to share more details about this new structure by the end of September. So no surprise, this is an ongoing and developing story and saga. We will have to wait for those further details, but at the very least, I'm intrigued to see where things go from here. And of course, once we get those details, get a clearer picture on how things are going to play out, I will be back with another update to fill you all in. My friends, that is just about everything I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this quick little update. As I said, I am very interested to see where this goes, really. really. And at this point, I would love to know your guys' thoughts on everything that we covered in today's update. Firstly, what do you make of this creative house structure that they're proposing? Does it seem like a model or system that could actually work well for the Division? And furthermore, moving forward, who do you foresee will be appointed to lead the Division's house? Will the Division be standalone in that? Could it be paired with the likes of Ghost Recon or Splinter Cell? Maybe a different composition altogether that I'm not thinking of? Whatever you've got or whatever your reactions are, I'd love to hear about it down below. That's going to do it for me today though, folks. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold out.